10 years apart, and a single word, "Hey Dad," was all it took to reconnect a family once thought broken. Have you ever lost something only to find it again in a way no one could have predicted? If this story made your heart skip a beat, don't forget to like, leave a comment to share how it made you feel, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that truly touch the heart. Because sometimes the most extraordinary miracles begin with just one look. Lucas Grant was the picture of success, a real estate mogul, billionaire entrepreneur, gracing magazine covers with headlines like "The Golden Man of the Century" or "New York's Most Devoted Father." But behind the shine was a heart far more fractured than anyone realized. He lived with his 10-year-old daughter, Ella, a curly-haired, wide-eyed girl whose spirit sparkled like morning sunlight. Ella was Lucas's entire world, the reason he woke up each day, smiled through exhaustion, and relearned how to breathe after a tragedy that nearly broke him. Years ago, Lucas had what looked like a perfect family. His wife, Amelia, was the love of his life. She died following a complicated childbirth. Lucas would never forget that bleak morning, the doctor stepping out with lowered eyes, gripping a folder tightly, and saying, "We're so sorry. She didn't make it." And the baby boy didn't survive either. Left behind was only Ella, a premature baby girl, somehow stronger than anyone expected, as if she had absorbed every ounce of life meant for her twin brother who never drew breath. Lucas never celebrated Ella's birthday, not because he didn't love her. He adored her more than anything, but because that date, each year, reopened a wound that never fully healed. He quietly poured his love into Ella, teaching her everything, taking her to the park, reading fairy tales every night. But he never once spoke of Amelia or the baby boy. To him, every word felt like a blade, slicing deeper into a memory already torn beyond repair. But Ella was different. She was born with a warm heart, a vivid imagination, and a way of saying things that sometimes startled the adults around her. "Daddy," she once asked, "if I had a brother, but he got lost and felt sad, what should I do?" Lucas could only smile, pull her into his arms, and whisper, "It's just us, sweetheart, and that's already the whole world." What he didn't know was that her question was the first whisper from a part of the past that had never truly gone. That Sunday morning was full of sunshine, soft light slipping through the sheer white curtains in Ella's room, casting a gentle glow on the drawings she'd made all week. Lucas was brewing coffee in the kitchen when he heard the light patter of bare feet coming down the stairs. Ella appeared, hugging a sketchbook nearly twice her size, her face lit up with excitement. "Daddy, I drew this yesterday after I dreamed about him," she said, holding the book out in front of Lucas. He bent down, smiling like he always did. But the smile faded as his eyes landed on the drawing. In it were two children, a little girl with curly hair in a blue dress, clearly Ella, and next to her, a thin boy in messy clothes holding a loaf of bread, standing in the rain. There was a sadness in his eyes, so deep, so haunting, it made Lucas's breath catch. It was a kind of sorrow Ella shouldn't have known how to draw. Lucas kept his voice steady. "Who's this boy, sweetheart?" Ella blinked and tilted her head, like it was the strangest question. "That's my brother, Daddy. He was just standing on the street, all soaked. I kept calling him, but he didn't answer. He just looked at me, and then disappeared. Like smoke." Lucas froze. A chill ran down his spine, despite the warmth of April in the air. He sat down beside his daughter and gently asked, "Ella, how many times have you dreamed about him?" "3 times," she said softly. "The first time, he was really far away. The second time, he got closer, and this time, he was crying." Lucas looked back at the drawing. That boy, those eyes, that posture, wasn't just a figure from a dream. He was sure he had seen that image somewhere before. Maybe in passing on the street? Or buried deep within his own memory? All day, Lucas felt like his mind was caught in a maze. He tried to reassure himself that it was nothing more than the vivid imagination of a bright child. But how could he explain that strange feeling in his chest, the sense that something hadn't been laid to rest? That night, as he was tucking Ella into bed, she suddenly turned and wrapped her arms tightly around his neck. "Daddy," she whispered, "if I really see him in real life, will you believe me?" Lucas said nothing at first. In the soft glow of the nightlight, his daughter's face looked pure, sincere, and strangely like a message from the universe itself. "Yeah," he said at last. "I promise. If you see him again, I'll believe you." Lucas had no idea that promise would be tested much sooner than he thought. That weekend, Lucas decided to take Ella to the southern suburbs of the city, where a famous open-air market was known for old handmade trinkets. Ella loved cloth dolls and wooden music boxes. For Lucas, it was simply a way to escape the unanswered questions swirling in his mind. Around noon, as they waited in line for some fresh waffles, Ella suddenly gripped his hand tightly. "Daddy," she whispered, "it's him." Lucas turned, following her gaze. Across the street, on the sidewalk, a boy around 10 years old was hunched over, picking up half a piece of bread that had fallen. His shirt was torn at the shoulder, jeans frayed at the cuffs, and one sneaker was missing its sole. The boy gently blew the dust off the bread, then ate hurriedly, as if it were his first meal in days. Lucas felt his chest tighten, as if something had seized his heart. Ella began trembling. Her voice rose, cutting through the crowd. "Daddy, that's my brother!" People turned, curious glances, a few frowns. But Lucas didn't notice them. He was frozen, not because of the sudden attention, but because of the boy's eyes as he looked up at them. Deep brown, shadowed beneath a mess of tangled hair. Unmistakably familiar. The boy looked at Ella for a few seconds, then suddenly turned and ran, as if frightened. Lucas immediately grabbed his daughter's hand and took off after him. They darted across the street, weaved through a row of food stalls, and stopped at a narrow alley at the far end of the market. But the boy was gone. Only a broken piece of bread lay on the ground. Damp, crumbling. Lucas was gasping for breath. He felt like someone who had just stumbled into a nameless dream. Ella held tightly to his hand, her eyes glassy with tears. "Daddy, you saw him, didn't you? He's real?" Lucas crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level, and gently touched her cheek. "Yes, I saw. I believe you. I promised, didn't I?" In that moment, deep inside, he knew this boy wasn't just a homeless child. There was a connection between them, something stronger than memory, beyond logic. And if Ella was right, if that boy truly was who Lucas feared he might be, then he had just lost the child he thought he'd already lost, one more time. That night, Lucas sat alone in his study, the soft amber glow of the desk lamp casting light across an old file he had just retrieved from the safe. He hadn't touched it in years, the medical file of Amelia, his wife, from that tragic childbirth 10 years ago. The diagnosis was clear. Twins, one male, one female. But on the following page, only Ella was listed as surviving. The section for the baby boy had been crossed out with a faded red pen. Back then, Lucas had been too shattered to question anything. The attending physician, Dr. Morris, had spoken in a low, sorrowful voice. "The baby boy wasn't breathing at birth. We did everything we could." Lucas remembered the numbness he felt, caught between mourning the woman he loved and forcing a smile for the fragile baby girl fighting for life in an incubator. Like so many others, he chose to bury the grief that never had time to fully form. But now, just one glance, one pair of eyes from a boy on the street had cracked that buried pain wide open. Lucas opened his laptop and typed Dr. William Morris into the search bar. Nothing came up locally. After more than an hour of digging, he found a faded article in a Canadian medical journal. Dr. William Morris, New Life, New Clinic in Montreal. The date of publication, just 1 month after Amelia's death. Why had he left so quickly? A chilling thought crept through Lucas's mind. Had something been hidden? He picked up his phone and called an old contact, a private investigator who had once helped him during a business dispute. "I need you to pull the full birth records of my wife at St. Vincent Hospital, October 10 years ago. And if any staff who worked that day are still alive, I want to meet them." The line went quiet for a few seconds before the voice replied, "Lucas? Who is this about?" Lucas clenched his fist. "The son I thought was dead." The next morning when Ella woke up, she saw her father sitting on the couch, still wearing the dress shirt from the night before. A cold cup of coffee rested in his hand. She quietly climbed onto the seat beside him and leaned against his shoulder. "I believe he's still alive, you know?" she whispered. Lucas gave a slight nod. "I'm starting to believe it too, Ella, and I won't let you dream alone anymore." Out there, somewhere in the vast city, a boy had no idea. Someone was finally coming to find him. Just a few blocks away from Lucas's upscale neighborhood, on the edge of an abandoned park, was a makeshift shelter for homeless kids. Beneath the shadows of a concrete overpass, Jaden, the 10-year-old boy Ella had recognized, sat curled up, clutching a torn coat someone had discarded. Beside him lay a small cloth bag holding a few crumbs of bread and a weathered notebook with frayed edges. Jaden didn't remember much about his early years. The memories came in flashes, like burned pieces of film, harsh white hospital lights, the sting of antiseptic, a lullaby in a voice he didn't know. Then came the stern face of a woman he'd once called foster mom, and the punishment, yelling, hitting, for wetting the bed or not folding a blanket right. Later came the orphanage, where hunger and invisibility taught him how to survive. The name Jaden was one he gave himself. On old records, he had once been listed as Baby X, an abandoned child with no known origin. At that same moment, Lucas received a call from the private investigator. "I found an old hospital report. You're going to want to see this for yourself." In a small office, where forgotten records sat untouched in rusted metal drawers, Lucas held a faded copy of a birth certificate that had never been entered into the official system. Under mother's name, Amelia Grant. Father's name, Lucas Grant. But what took Lucas's breath away was the name of the child, Jonah Grant. Jonah, the name Amelia had chosen for their son before she even knew she was carrying twins. Lucas stared at the name, mind blank. How did this name never show up in any of the official records? The detective shrugged. Because someone covered it up. I also found the name of a nurse who assisted during the birth, Sylvia Morrison. She left the hospital just weeks after your wife passed. Rumor has it she was deep in debt. Lucas shot to his feet. I need her address. That evening, when Lucas shared just enough of the story for Ella to understand, the little girl sat in silence for a long moment. Then she stepped into her bedroom, pulled something small from a drawer, went there and placed it in his hand. It was an old, scratched pewter heart-shaped locket. I found it the other day when he ran away. He dropped it, Daddy? Lucas opened the locket. Inside was a faded engraving, to JG from Mom, with all my love. He couldn't say a word. He just pulled Ella into his arms. That boy was no longer a theory. He had a name. He had memories. And he had a mother who had once loved him. Late in the afternoon, the city sky was veiled in a blanket of gray clouds. Lucas drove to his late wife's childhood home, the place where Amelia had lived before they married. The small 2-story house, now overgrown with ivy and long untouched, still held the same layout from the days when Ella's grandmother was alive. Lucas hadn't been back in years. The door creaked loudly as he pushed it open, and dust filled the air like a welcome from an old, forgotten friend. Yet, in his heart, this place still held fragments of sweet memories. Amelia's laughter, the evenings they spent reading together in the living room, and the first time she'd placed his hand on her belly and whispered, "There are 2 of them, love." He made his way upstairs, into Amelia's old room. Beneath the rug at the foot of the bed, Lucas found the mahogany box she once used to store her most precious keepsakes. Inside, he discovered a few handwritten letters, a worn journal, and an envelope without a name. He opened it carefully. Inside was a letter, Amelia's handwriting soft and even. My dearest Lucas, if I don't wake up after this birth, please forgive me for not telling you sooner. I know I'm carrying twins, a boy and a girl. But I didn't tell you, not because I didn't trust you, but because I was afraid. Afraid you'd worry too much. Afraid I wouldn't have a chance to say it later. I've chosen the name Jonah for our son, after your grandfather. And if our daughter comes out strong, name her Ella, like we promised years ago under the oak tree. Lucas sank to the floor, the letter trembling in his hands. Tears fell silently. He'd once believed he had cried himself dry 10 years ago, but now he realized some tears wait for the right moment before they're allowed to fall. At the very bottom of the box, he found the ultrasound photo, not the blurry, uncertain image he'd held onto all these years, but a crisp, clear print labeled twins. 32 weeks. 2 tiny forms, side by side. 2 hearts that once beat beneath the skin of the woman he had loved more than anything in this world. Lucas whispered, Jonah, you never left me. I'm the one who left you. He slipped the letter and the photo into his jacket pocket, his heart filled with resolve. Everything was clear now. Jonah, Jaden, had never died. He'd been taken, hidden away, and forced to grow up in hunger and hurt. But Lucas knew there was still one person left he had to face, Nurse Sylvia Morrison. The woman who had stolen a child's life and robbed him of 10 years of fatherhood. The next morning, Lucas met the detective at a small cafe in the old quarter. The man handed him a thick envelope. Inside was the file on Sylvia Morrison, the nurse who had overseen Amelia's delivery. "She lives alone in a rental apartment in the Marlowe district," the detective said. "Retired nearly 10 years ago. History of debt. There were past investigations into her accepting gratuities from desperate families, but nothing ever stuck." Lucas didn't need more. He shook the man's hand and drove straight to the listed address. The apartment was on the 3rd floor, peeling paint on the walls, dimly lit, damp-smelling hallways. Lucas knocked on the door. After a moment, it creaked open, revealing a frail, silver-haired woman in her 70s. Her eyes squinted cautiously at him. "Sylvia Morrison?" Lucas asked, his voice eerily calm. "Who are you?" she replied, guarded. "I'm Lucas Grant. My wife, Amelia, gave birth to twins at St. Vincent's 10 years ago, and I believe you switched my son." A heavy silence fell. Sylvia stood frozen, as if struck by lightning. Her hands trembled, though her eyes stayed defensive. "I don't know what you're talking about." Lucas reached into his pocket and pulled out the ultrasound photo and Amelia's handwritten letter. Then slowly, he opened his palm, letting the old tin heart pendant fall with a soft, cold clink. "The boy you labeled Baby X is Jonah, my son." Sylvia turned away, trembling. Her voice cracked. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. They came to me. A couple from Canada. Wealthy. Couldn't have children. They promised they'd give the baby a good life. They paid me. At the time I was drowning, in debt to the hospital, to the bank, everything. I thought the baby would be okay." Lucas nearly shouted, his voice shaking. "Okay? He lived in an orphanage. He ate scraps, wandered the streets, while you told yourself he'd be okay?" Sylvia broke down in tears. She wasn't a monster, but poverty, desperation, and greed had pushed her past a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Lucas stared at the woman before him, disheveled hair, shaking hands, clouded eyes. He thought he'd feel hatred, but what washed over him instead was a deep, aching sorrow. Because in this story, everyone had lost something. Before leaving, he said just one thing. "His name is Jonah, and I won't let anyone take my son from me again." 1 week after the confrontation with Sylvia Morrison, Lucas walked into the lab with a heavy heart. In his hand was an envelope containing the results of a DNA test, run discreetly using a hair sample from Jaden, the boy he believed to be his son. He had waited 10 years for this moment. And now that it was right in front of him, his hands trembled as he tore open the seal. His eyes scanned past the numbers, the technical jargon, until they landed on the final line. Conclusion: probability of biological father-son relationship, 99.998%. Match confirmed. Lucas collapsed into the chair, head bowed. His chest felt like something had struck it from the inside. He had found Jonah, the child he once thought was lost forever. But the joy didn't come all at once, because that boy wasn't the child he had once named in a dream. He had grown up without him, without love, without a home, and now he didn't want to come back. That afternoon, Lucas returned to the old neighborhood where Jaden usually stayed. The boy was sitting under a tree, sunlight filtering through the leaves onto the worn notebook he used to sketch in. Jaden was quiet, reserved, and guarded, even around Ella's warmest smiles. Lucas approached slowly, settling onto the ground beside him, careful to leave just enough space not to startle him. "Jaden, I need to tell you something. Something important." The boy didn't look up. "If it's about food, I'm not hungry." "It's not about food," Lucas said, voice raspy. I'm your biological father." Jaden looked up. His dark eyes widened, not with surprise, but with defense. Cold, like someone who had heard too many things in life that turned out not to be true. "I don't have a dad or a mom, and I don't need anyone claiming me. I've made it this far on my own." His voice was firm, though his lips trembled slightly. Lucas didn't speak right away. Then he gently placed 3 things on the ground: an old ultrasound photo, Amelia's letter, and the tin heart-shaped pendant Jaden had dropped. "I'm not here to take you away. I'm just here to say I'm sorry for not being there, for leaving you alone all these years." Jaden stared at the items as if they came from another universe. He didn't speak. He didn't cry. He simply turned his face away. Lucas stood, softly placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I'll come back, not to make you leave. Just so you know, I'll be here, no matter what you choose." Then he walked away. No miracle happened. No embrace. No one called Dad. Just a moment of silence. But to Lucas, it was the first step toward healing. And for Jaden, maybe the first time someone stayed. In the days that followed, Lucas stopped seeking Jaden out. He didn't want to force the boy into a relationship he wasn't ready for. Instead, he and Ella began spending more time at the park near where Jaden stayed. Just casual visits. And casually, they always brought an extra meal. The first time, Jaden watched from a distance. The second time, he came a little closer. By the third time, when Ella tripped trying to climb a stone bench, Jaden ran over without hesitation. "You okay?" he asked, voice low but clear. He knelt and gently brushed the dirt from her scraped knee. Lucas didn't intervene. He stood a few steps back, watching Jaden, not with the eyes of a father reclaiming a lost child, but of a man learning how to love a kid who'd known nothing but rejection. Ella bit her lip, holding back tears, then suddenly wrapped her arms around Jaden. "You're just like in my dreams. You always show up to save me." Jaden didn't respond at first, but then his shoulders relaxed. He let the hug happen, didn't push her away, didn't run. That afternoon, for the first time, Jaden agreed to eat with them. Sandwiches, orange juice, and a napkin carefully folded around the polished tin pendant. He took it without a word and slipped it into his pocket. That was enough for Lucas. From that day forward, their visits stopped being accidental. Ella and Jaden sketched together on the park bench. Lucas taught them both how to play chess and pretended to lose so Ella's laughter would echo under the trees. One afternoon, Jaden glanced up and asked quietly, "Do you know how to double knot shoelaces so they never come undone?" Lucas smiled and knelt beside him. "When I was your age, my dad made me practice for a whole week just to get it right. Now it's my turn to teach you." The word dad drifted in the air like a breeze, light, fleeting. Neither of them said anything, but even Jaden noticed. He no longer flinched at talk of family. One afternoon, Ella showed up with 3 popsicles. When Jaden tried to refuse, she pouted. "If you don't eat, I'm going to be mad. I don't like it when you disappear." Jaden sighed and finally took the vanilla one. "Fine, just this once. Not saying I'm staying or anything." Ella grinned and winked. "You don't have to promise. Just show up again tomorrow." Lucas sat quietly, watching the 2 kids. His heart, once clenched tight by grief, was slowly opening, gently, patiently. Love, he realized, doesn't always start with blood, but it grows when you simply stay. The first day Jaden agreed to step into Lucas's house was a day with no sun, no rain, just overcast enough to feel like the beginning of something new. He stood on the doorstep, clutching the strap of his worn-out backpack, eyes lifting toward the large house with quiet hesitation. Ella held his hand, chattering excitedly. "I saved the room next to mine for you! I even put your name on the door!" Lucas opened the door and offered the gentlest smile he could. "You don't have to stay unless you're ready, but this door will always be open, Jonah." Jaden froze at the sound of that name, the one on his birth certificate, the name his mother had chosen. For the first time, he didn't reject it. He simply nodded and stepped inside, quiet as a breeze. But this time, not to escape. In the days that followed, the house, once quiet with just 2 voices, began to buzz with life. Jaden didn't say much, but he started showing up more. He quietly helped Lucas in the yard, washed the car, and at night, read stories to Ella until she drifted off. Lucas noticed the boy often standing in front of the framed photo on the fireplace, the one of Amelia holding newborn Ella, the last one they had left. One night, after Ella had fallen asleep, Jaden sat beside Lucas in the living room. The warm glow of the lamp lit up his face, and Lucas could barely hold back the wave of emotion. "I know I'm not a good kid," Jaden said quietly. "I got into fights at the shelter, I've stolen things, and I don't know how to call someone dad." Lucas stayed silent for a moment, then replied softly, "I'm not a perfect father either. I believed my son was gone, and I lived 10 years without looking. Whether you forgive me or not, I'm not going anywhere." Jaden turned to him, eyes slightly red. "I don't know if I can forgive you, but I don't want to run anymore." Lucas nodded. That was enough. No promises, no thank yous needed. Just the boy choosing to stay. And suddenly, Lucas's world felt more whole than he'd ever dared to dream. A week later, back at the park where it all began, Ella tugged Jonah's hand and led him to the middle of the grass. She held up a camera. "Let's take a picture with Dad," And you better smile. Lucas knelt down and wrapped his arms around them both. The camera clicked, capturing a family that wasn't perfect, but whole. A father with scars, a daughter full of light, and a boy who had once been lost, now finally home. Because family doesn't always start with blood, but it always ends with love.